Go live. Hold on. From the top. From the top. Oh my, what's going on?
This podcast
oh
is
my
for
God.
informational purposes
Oh, lordy, Lord.
Look what happened. Usually it's me when I forget to put, unmute. And he's like, oh, God, these boomers. I can't deal with them. I just can't deal with them. This is how millennials talk when boomers aren't around. I just don't know what to do. And now, look what happened. What goes around comes around.
Oh, boy. Off to a rough start this way. I forgot to hit go live. All right, your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, April 27th is just moments away. But before we do this, we need to thank our sponsors like SEIU Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana. The Chicago Federation of Labor are sponsors, as well as Chicago Reader. ChicagoReader.com for all things there is to know the city of Chicago, where to go, what to do, what to eat, what to drink, what to smoke, what? How to think politically with columns like Ben Joravsky and Maya Dukmasova and so much more. Chicago Reader, ChicagoReader.com. Subscribe and help out the Ben Joravsky Show. ChicagoReader.com/Joravsky. Jorav as in victory, SKY. There, not only will you find our endless archive of episodes. Are we to 1,000 episodes, Ben?
2 away. Today will be 999, and tomorrow 1,000.
You hear that, people? So if we don't just botch everything in the next 2 days, we will be at 1,000 shows. Yeah! All right, and also become a bin head. ChicagoReader.com/Joravsky, and there you can learn how to be a bin head. It's a 3-tier system. You can be in the alley, the avenue, or the boulevard. Find out more. ChicagoReader.com/Joravsky. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Tuesday, April 27th, and live from my apartment and his attic, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, SEIU Healthcare's Jaquie Algee, a mystery guest, and Martha Shockey. And now your host. Oh, it's no mystery. He's here every day. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Unfair Maps Tuesday, and here's why. Great weekend. You have a good weekend, D?
Yes, I did. It was a great weekend.
He got up early, ladies and gentlemen. Got up early at the crack of dawn and went for a bike ride today. He's looking very fit and fiddle.
I woke up at 9, but sure.
Well, that's early for me. I, on the other hand, was out really late last night. So, I'm not fit and I'm not a fiddle. Anyway, what did I do this weekend? On Sunday, I watched the Oscars. Very disappointed. The injustice continues. An Oscar does not pass without me railing against some injustice. So first of all, I will count the injustices. Number one, the award for Best Actor should not, I repeat, have gone to Anthony Hopkins. It should have gone to, as everyone knows, Chadwick Boseman. We all know that. And the award for Best Actress should not, I repeat, have gone to Frances McDormand. It should have gone to Viola Davis. We all know that too. And the award for Best Supporting Actor should not have gone to Daniel Kaluuya. It should have gone to Lakeith Stanfield. We all know that as well. That brought on a really interesting debate last night at bowling. Kaluuya played Fred Hampton in the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, and Lakeith Stanfield played O'Neill, who was the turncoat, the rat, the snitch. And so last night at bowling, some of my bowling teammates were saying, after I expressed the injustice that Lakeith Stanfield didn't win, they go, Ben, you cannot give the award to the guy who was the rat. You got to give the award to the revolutionary. I'm like, guys, it's not a popularity contest. It's not the high school cafeteria, okay? I know you like Fred Hampton better than the guy who ratted on him, but this is about giving an award to the best actor. Now, come on. And, of course, the award for Best Picture should not have gone to Nomadland. It should have gone to Minari. Basically, Oscars, you messed everything up. Other than that, great show. I love Glenn Close. Turned out that was rehearsed. Okay, so here's how it went down. Questlove, who was the DJ, played a song to Butt from the 80s, and they asked Glenn Close, who is of my generation, about the song, and all of a sudden she knew everything. It was an unbelievable recitation. And I'm telling you, man, as a baby boomer, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I wasn't paying attention to music in the 80s. She's like, oh, yes, that's EQ from the movie School Days. They didn't get the Oscar because it was never nominated, and shame on the Academy. And then she gets up and dances to Butt. It's the highlight of the show. And now it turns out the whole thing was rehearsed. They fed her the lines. She didn't know any more about the Butt than I did. Showbiz, ladies and gentlemen, it's just showbiz. Anyway, I woke up to discover the rosy glow of stardom had faded. We're back in the real world, ladies and gentlemen. Dog eat dog, cat eat dog, dog eat cats, world of politics. The census numbers came out. The picture's grim for Democrats, and it's good news for Republicans. Now go live to hear Mitch McConnell's reaction to the census. That's the sinister cackle of evil men up to no good. The headline in the New York Times tells it all. U.S. population growth second slowest on record. Political map will shift. Immigration lags as birth rates declines. Because they shut down the border, close up the immigration. So, of course, population falls. Okay, explanation time, ladies and gentlemen. Every 10 years, we have a census, meaning every 10 years, we count the people who live in the United States and where they live. And after that census, we redraw the political maps. Why? Because one man, one vote is a sacred principle in our system. No one state, no one district can have any more representation than any other state or district, relatively speaking. Except, of course, when we elect a president. In that case, the small Republican states get more representation than the big Democratic states, except for Washington, D.C., which gets no representation at all because it's not a state. But it's just a coincidence that Washington has a majority of black people. Got that? Just a coincidence. Race has nothing to do with it. Where was I? Oh, yes. Republicans will have the advantage when it comes to allocating more congressmen after the census. Why? We've explained this before. I'll explain it again. If more people move to Texas so that gain seats, that doesn't necessarily mean Republicans will have an advantage because the new people may be Democrats. For all we know, they may be hipsters from the Bay Area in San Francisco, or they may be black people remigrating to the South, as Charles Blow has suggested in his new book. That's true. But the people drawing the maps in Texas are Republicans, and they will move heaven and earth to guarantee that the maps they draw will benefit their party by packing Democrats into supermajority Democratic districts. And if they have to squeeze every hipster migrating from the Bay Area into Austin, Texas, then damn it, that's what they'll do. Meanwhile, they'll cleverly disperse MAGA people throughout the state to maximize their power. And they will do the same thing in Florida and North Carolina, which also experience growth in population and which will also get more congressional seats. And that's why the evil and sinister cackle of Mitch McConnell continues. When they're done, they will have a greater chance to take control of Congress, even though more and more people are voting Democratic. They will have a better chance to enact legislation that cuts unions, limits the minimum wage, gives tax breaks to the wealthy, pushes back environmental protections, limits rights to choice, et cetera, and so forth. In short, they will, through gerrymandering, limit the will and the power, and they will win even though they lost at the ballot box. What we need is a national fair map bill that guarantees fair mapping in every state of the land. But of course, Republicans won't tolerate that. Instead, what we'll have in state by state is fair mapping crusades in states where Democrats are in charge. And that's why Republicans in Illinois, which is controlled again by Democrats, will use their power to beg and plead for fair maps that limit Democratic power and give them more of a say in the state Illinois politics. And a few, I'm sad to say, very idealistic and easily fooled good government types will say, yes, we need that. And I'll say, no, Democrats don't fall for it. No fair map in Illinois until they have one in Texas, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, Florida. Democrats, Democrats, Democrats. Why do you have to be so gullible all the time? You hear that sound in the distance? It's the sinister cackle of evil men snatching back your democracy. Don't let them get away with it. We got a great show today, everybody. Jaquie Algee, yes, the great Jaquie Algee from SEIU Healthcare. SEIU Healthcare is one of the sponsors of our show. So we're going to be very respectful to Jaquie Algee. Actually, I'd be very respectful to her anyway. And she's bringing a mystery guest.
Did you say a mystery guest?
Yes. It's a mystery guest.
Whoa.
I know the guest's name, but it's a mystery to our listeners. They will find out in a little while. And then in the second part of the show, we will have Martha Shockey from Indivisible in Georgia, activist, who's been leading the good fight, waging the good fight for a long, long time. An old friend and ally of Congressman John Lewis. And I urge every gullible Democrat in the state of Illinois to listen very carefully to not only Jaquie and our mystery guest, but also to Martha Shockey from Georgia. Because if you want to know what Republicans do when they have legislative power to undo any remote semblance of fairness in a map, then you got to hear the story that's coming out of Georgia. So Martha Shockey will be joining us in the second half of the show. But first, we're going to bring on Jaquie Algee and our mystery guest after we take this brief break.
Now, the list of things that you can buy at the Chicago Reader store at chicagoreader.com. Things to wear like Chicago Reader hats, t-shirts, bandanas, and face masks. Things for your daily life like the Chicago Reader camping mug, Chicago Reader tote bags, and a Chicago Reader reporter's notebook. Things for you to read like our Reader recipes, the Chicago Reader 420 Companion, our Chicago Reader Best of book series from journalists Maya Dukmasova, Mike Sula, Ben Jarofsky, and Leor Galil, the Chicago Reader coloring book, and the Chicago Reader Stay Home puzzle. Find the Chicago Reader store at chicagoreader.com and show your support for the nation's first free weekly newspaper since 1971. Welcome back to the Ben Jarofsky Show, live from his attic.
I was at bowling last night, and it was just an ungodly late hour. It's closing in on midnight, and I got a text from my good friend Jaquie Algee saying, "Could you come on the show? She has important news." My first thought was, what is Jaquie Algee doing up at this ungodly late hour? I finally found someone who has weirder sleeping patterns than I do. So I said, absolutely. Jaquie Algee, a very good friend of the show from SEIU Healthcare. And Jaquie, welcome back to the show. And you have a mystery guest. Why don't you take an opportunity to introduce this distinguished guest?
Thank you, Ben. You know, it's always great to see you and to spend time with you, man, because you stand in your truth and the truth that all of us should know. And that is, you know, just how to get justice. Justice is the key. That is the word of the day, justice for all, or phrase of the day. And so with that, I want to introduce proudly Pastor William Fleshman from Abundant Life out in Dalton. And he's just an amazing, amazing man, faith leader. And he's one of those rebels for the cause as well. So, Pastor Fleshman, you want to please introduce yourself and then tell them why you're here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Jaquie, for that introduction. And Ben, thank you so much, of course, for having us on the show today. My name is, again, Pastor William Fleshman. I am the Executive Director of Outreach for Southland Ministerial Health Network. And what we're here to discuss today is, I mean, pretty much everybody, I hope everybody knows about the National John Lewis Day of Action. And many of us may remember back on March 7th, 1965, John Lewis said he gave a little blood on that bridge in Selma, Alabama, for the right to vote, and that he wasn't going to do anything to allow someone to take that right away from him. And so on May 8th, which again is the National Day of John Lewis National Day of Action, we're going to be hosting some events. And these events are really based around the voters' rights. I'm sorry, the Voting Rights Act. And these events are based around that, which really, Jaquie, is based around the 15th Amendment, which promised us, which gave us a promise that we wouldn't have any issues or discrimination as people of color when voting was concerned. And so on May 8th, we're going to be hosting some events. I want to just give you, first of all, just kind of give you the route, the plan of what we're doing. We're going to start at 2 p.m. The event starts at 1, but we're going to start our votercade at 2 p.m. It's going to be at the U.S. Bank Building, which is located at 1350 Sibley Boulevard. And we'll be doing a votercade. We're going to make a lot of noise. We want horns going. We want people walking up and down the street. I mean, because this is huge. I mean, we cannot allow voters to be alienated by increased barriers. And that's what this will do. If this doesn't pass, then our voters will be, there'll be, increased barriers and continued voter suppression. So on that day, we're going to have a votercade from 1350 Sibley Boulevard, and we're going to go to what we're calling a Voters Village, which would be Abundant Living Christian Center, which is located at 14540 Lincoln Avenue. And so we're going to have all kinds of events set up that day. We're going to have COVID testing. We'll have COVID vaccination. There'll be information and resources for all the people that come out and be a part of this event. There'll also be guest speakers that will be there. I'm going to be one of the speakers. I'll speak a little more in detail about the Voters' Rights Act and just give a little more detail and history about it. And then we're going to have vendors. We're asking vendors from the community to come out and be a part of this event. Ben, we want to make this event so large, man. We want this event to go worldwide. Right now, there's about 106 events happening throughout the country that'll be happening at the same time. So we really want this thing, man, to just go crazy. We want everybody getting in and supporting.
Before I move to Jaquie, let me just say there's two very important bills that the House and the Senate are considering right now. And one is named for John Lewis. And I'm going to ask Jaquie to talk a little bit about John Lewis and his significance. But just one bill, a Voting Rights Act bill, which would undo the damage or attempt to undo the damage created by a Supreme Court ruling. Supreme Court justices matter, ladies and gentlemen. 2013 Holder versus Shelby County. And that basically eradicated the requirement that states with wretched histories of racial discrimination, Pastor Fleshman, would no longer need to get federal approval before they enacted voting laws that are essentially intended to discourage and deter Black people from voting. Let's just be honest, what it's all about. And so that's one of the bills. It's going to be very tough to get that one through the Senate. And then the other bill would just be more proactive, H.R. 1, on terms of voting rights and now allowing people on a federal level to vote early, to register without IDs, et cetera, and so forth. So these are the legislations that Pastor Fleshman and Jaquie Algee will be championing on May 8th. Jaquie, talk a little bit about the legacy of the late, great Congressman John Lewis.
Oh, my Lord. I truly don't have enough time, but what I will say is that he was an incredible civil rights leader who really, when you talk about giving your life for a cause, he did just that. So many times that his life was threatened, he was beaten. You've seen pictures of what happened to him at the Pettus Bridge and other places. He was someone who, when you talk about, when people say, you walk the walk and talk the talk, he did just that. When you hear his quote, which I love, get into some good trouble. He meant just that. He had no reservation about standing up to anyone. And had it not been for him and his insistence and push, we might not have had that National Day of the meeting on the mall when Dr. King spoke, because John Lewis had already pushed hard and demanded that voting rights, voting rights bill happen. So this might not have happened had we not had a John Lewis that insisted, that did blood, sweat, and tears literally to make sure that we had that right. So he, you know, I had the fortune of one time, he and I had been at a conference, right? And everybody was just trying to get around and get up to him, of course, because why wouldn't you? I was one of those people. Couldn't get up to him, right? Because everybody, they kept beating me to the punch. And we happened to end up in the airport, Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, at the same time in the same space. Man, and you know, Ben, you know, I don't shy away from talking about anything to anybody, right? I got tongue-tied. I was just amazed that I was in his presence. And he was so gracious and kind. And we had a moment, you know, where we talked about why we were there. And, you know, it just brings me to tears, because it was just one of those times when you say, oh, so this is why I do this every day, right? This is really why I do this every day.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that and ask Pastor Fleshman this question, because I was listening to Jaquie Algee as you're talking about John Lewis, and I never had the opportunity to meet him, but he is, yes, as Jaquie said, for people of my generation, he's this legendary, iconic figure, Pastor Fleshman, who was on the bridge, and the Alabama State Troopers whacked him in the head with their batons and billy clubs, what have you. Then he later became a congressman from a district in Atlanta, and he was this great symbolic figure that united Democrats in Washington and put Republicans on a defensive. Because it's like, well, you don't want to insult this iconic figure in American history by enacting legislation that is counter to everything he stood for, Pastor Fleshman. But on the other hand, if we want to hold on to power, we got to pass legislation that's counter to everything he stood for. And now that he's gone, you hear Republicans saying things like, well, that's the old days.
Yeah.
Power was gone. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Come on, Ben, get modern and hip and cool. It's a relic of the past. Pastor Fleshman, talk about that a little bit. Is it, in your mind, a relic of the past, the Jim Crow era? Go ahead.
No, sir. I think that it is as present as it has ever been. And when you talk about voter suppression, when you talk about racial discrimination, I think it is as prevalent as it has ever been. And I think that the legacy of John Lewis, though he may be gone, and you know, Republicans or whomever may be able to feel a little relaxed, I think that this National Day prayerfully will charge us and motivate us to get us really back into the fight, Ben, because it is, I mean, it's so prevalent now. I believe it's more prevalent than it ever has been. And if we're going to make a difference, I would hope, well, first of all, I would hope that no representative would try and be the filibuster on this thing. Who wants to be known as the filibuster, you know, against the Voting Rights Act? I mean, that's like going against apple pie and I mean, you know, all things that are American at this point. But what I think it really takes is, at this point, Ben, is some re-education. For people to know what happened. It's generations that have no idea who John Lewis even was, or what he stood for, or even what voter suppression really is. And so I think it's our responsibility to share what is really prevalent and what is going on now in order to make a difference with where we're going to take this thing starting on May 8th. And I believe it'll go even further. But Ben, no, it's more prevalent now, and we must stay the course and be even more diligent than we've ever been before because it's as if, you know, nobody cares, nobody's paying attention, and things can happen if we allow them to, but we're not going to allow them to happen.
Jaquie, I'm going to go on another one of my soapboxes here, but then I'll kick it to you. But I'm going to quote Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Okay. And he said this. I think he said it in 1988 when he was running for president. And he said he was trying to explain to his white political allies why it was so important that we protect the rights of Black people to vote. And he was doing it in a very pragmatic, practical way, which really resonated with me, Jaquie, Algee. He said, white liberals, in those days they were called liberals, now progressives, okay, whatever. White liberals, when Black people vote, you're going to get environmental protection. You're going to get right to choose. You're going to get like good budget habits from our legislators. All the things, you're going to get union rights. All the things that you say you want, you're going to get when Black people vote, because guess what? They tend to vote liberal. And it's just such a practical, I was like, that's why he's Jesse Jackson. I'm just some reporter, you know? Take it away, Jaquie, and talk a little bit more about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we saw that in this most recent election, right? And President Biden, he knows very well, he knows full well why he's in office today, because you had thousands, I don't know the exact number, of Black voters who came out, start with Georgia, that stood in the rain and the sun and the cold and all of that, just to make sure that they cast their vote. Why? Because they saw hope in a Joe Biden. And that's how he ended up there, right? Not to forget, he should never, right? But this is when you talk about systems and systemic things happening in our culture and in our society, that's systemic for Black people. We vote on the side of right or the side of justice for all. And whatever that means, what that means are certainly some of the things that you just outlined, Ben, when you're talking about union rights or the right to organize. I got to stand up for that because that's who I work for proudly. I hit the floor every day for our members, every day, because they deserve the rights that a good voting and election process should bring to bear, right? Good schools, education for our kids that are equal to what kids are getting in other zip codes, healthcare that what other people are getting in other zip codes. We deserve all of these things. And so when Black people vote, I'm not speaking for all Black people, but I think I'm pretty confident in saying that the majority of Black people who vote liberal, who vote Democratic, who vote their conscience, will vote for people who will stand in the gap for them.
Well, you know, that last point you made is a good one, and I'm going to direct this tough question to Pastor Fleshman, see how he handles it. Not all Black people vote the same way, and a day doesn't pass, Pastor Fleshman, when I don't get an email from Senator Tim Scott, a Black man who is a senator from South Carolina, and a congressman that I don't know if you've heard of, Burgess Owens, who's a congressman from Utah. And they're Black men. They're Black MAGA people. They love Trump and they love the Republican Party and they're members of the Republican Party. And what they tell me, Pastor Fleshman, it's like jujitsu. They flip it. They say it's racist to say that voting laws that require people to get an ID are anti-Black because that presumes that Black people don't have IDs. So people like me who say they're opposed to the laws that Georgia has imposed, that Texas is trying to impose, that Michigan has imposed, that Wisconsin has imposed, people like me are the racists. And people like you, Pastor Fleshman, are, I don't know if you can be a racist, but you're kind of a racist ally This is the flip flop. I'm just telling you what I get every day from Tim Scott,
Mm-hmm.
who's a senator from South Carolina, black man.
Yeah.
Burgess Owens, who's a congressman from Utah, a black man. What's your response, Pastor? I know you've had to have heard these same arguments. I can't be the only one getting these emails. What's your response when you hear arguments like this? Go ahead, Pastor.
I think that's blatant discrimination. I think that wow, that is crazy. I think that Ben, I think that when how can I even really explain it here? Help me out, Jaquie. Let me get this thought together. I want to say, okay, I'll say it. I'm just gonna say it the way I want to say it. All right, Ben.
It's where you want to say it.
Okay, I'm saying it the way I want to say it. In order to be a racist, you must first think that you're superior. Okay, and unfortunately, a lot of laws and legislation do not allow black people to feel that way. We feel a little bit inferior. And so they can flip it and say however they want. They can call us whatever they want to call us. But I'll tell you what, I'll get behind. What did you say they call you, Ben? They call you a what?
They call me what is Tim Scott and Burgess Owens call me?
Yeah.
They'll say I'm a racist, and they'll say you're my allies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. And I'll be a racist ally if that's what it takes in order to promote what is right and to empower black people. I feel like now is the most opportune time for any person of color to begin to move forward as an individual and collectively. If we're going to do anything, right now is the time for Black America to reestablish, to renew, to really be empowered and to move forward. And they can call us whatever, and they can try and flip it and they can make it appear to be deceitful and all of those things. They can say what they want. But now is the time for Black America to really be awakened and to understand that our vote, like John said, Mr. Lewis said, our vote is precious and it's sacred, and we can't allow anybody to mess with or stop us from voting. We got to start getting out, irregardless of what anybody says or what they do. I really don't care what they think, but I will be a racist ally because we need to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Jaquie,
Can
your
I
thoughts?
just add something on that? So, people say or have the notion that, oh, well, yeah, that's a Southern thing. And, Southern states are trying to block people from voting. That is not true. That is not true. There is suppression, forms of suppression here in Illinois that people don't talk about. So voting suppression is real. It's a fact. It's a real thing. And what you got to do is pay attention to how it shows up for you or in your neighborhood or in your community or in your newspaper or wherever you're getting your information from. Just pay attention. Pay attention. And if you don't feel suppressed yourself directly, know that there are people who are. And so for me, it's voter suppression anywhere is not something that we can allow on our watch. Going back to what Pastor Fleshman is saying, can't allow it on our watch. We have got to be those that really stand up like we're doing on May 8th. And if I want to give a little bit about May 8th and as it relates to Chicago. So we're going to have, Chicago is one of those 106 cities, proud to say, and we're going to have votercades leading from 4 locations on that day. There will be a votercade that leads from Rainbow Push that I would suspect that Reverend Jackson is going to be leading. There will be a votercade leaving from Malcolm X College. There will be a votercade leaving from the north side, Diversity Avenue. I have to give you that exact address, Ben. I'll look it up while we're still on. And then there's a votercade leaving from 83rd and Stony. And so all of those processions will converge or end up at 31st Street and Lakeshore Drive
Mm.
in southwest parking lot. And there we'll have a program as well. We won't have the voter village as they're going to have in Dalton, but we will have a program, and we'll have folks gathering. We expect to have at least 175 to 200 cars there, because we're doing ours more kind of similar to what President Biden did for his campaign, like a drive-in kind of thing.
Yeah, so that'll be
Martha's there.
Yes, Martha Shockey has joined us from Georgia. We bring him in from all over the country in the Ben Joravsky Show. So we're going to bring Martha on a little bit, take the deep dive on the specifics of how these new laws are affecting voting rights in Georgia, how it's a maneuver by Republicans to snatch back the power they lost at the polls, to undo the damage as they see it from the 2020 election. So it's good to see that folks in Chicago are not just leaving this fight, Jaquie, Algee, to the Martha Shockeys of the world and the people who live in Georgia and Atlanta, that it is a unified effort. I want to thank you, Jaquie and William, Pastor, for coming on the show. Jaquie, if you would just send me whatever information you have, I'll make a point of passing it on every opportunity I get, all right?
I will. Thanks,
Ben.
so much. We appreciate you, Ben. Thank you.
All right.
Please
thank
come
you.
and join us on May 8th, whether you be here in the city or in Dalton. Come join us.
Very good. That's Jaquie, Algee, and Pastor Fleshman. When we return, we'll have Martha Shockey from Georgia.
Awesome.
right, commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from his attic. Microphone's on mute.
For the last 2 months, ladies and gentlemen, I've been thinking about the state of Georgia. You know, I haven't been thinking about Georgia politics in years, and all of a sudden, absolutely crystallized. Of course, because the state of the Senate hinged on who would win the special elections in Georgia in January. So, like lefties all across the country, I turned my attention to Georgia, and I haven't stopped paying attention since. Because the Georgia Republicans have made an effort to undo, as I said earlier, what they considered the damage of January's election. With me to talk about it is Indivisible's own Martha Shockey, who lives in Georgia and has lived in Georgia for most of your life. Is that correct, Martha? Did I get that right?
That's correct. I spent a little bit of time in Japan, but then I came back to Georgia.
All right. So why don't, before we get into the specifics of what's happening right now with the legislation in Georgia and the impact of the Democratic Party from what it was when you were a little kid to what it's like now. You and I are roughly the same age.
Yeah.
So we've seen a few things, Martha. And conversely, the evolution or the transformations of the Republican Party. Talk about Georgia then, Georgia now. Go ahead.
So yeah, Georgia, when I was growing up, was definitely, still a Jim Crow state. I remember very well, as a young child, white only signs, no colored people signs. But after the Civil Rights Movement, and during the Civil Rights Movement, after the Civil Rights Movement, things began to change. And Georgia kind of moved into a place of, let's just pretend none of this is going on. We're all good. We all get along just fine, don't we? Well, that was not, of course, the case until desegregation happened. And then there were several tense years here, of course, as schools began to desegregate and the power maps began to change. And, we were still a Democratic-led state, although, certainly not as progressive as our Democrats are now, but they had made some progress. And then we had Jimmy Carter as our governor. When I was growing up. So I knew a lot of people actually who were Democrats. It wasn't a dirty word for sure. But I also lived near Fort Benning. So there was, it was an international community. But if you went further out into the boonies, then it was a different ballgame. Mm-hmm. And Black people certainly had different experiences out there in terms of voter suppression. There are just thousands of stories about various things that happened to people as they tried to claim their right to vote. And it's still happening out there. It didn't end.
With that, just listening to what you were talking about, reminiscing about the early days in the 60s when you were a kid. And I grew up, been raised in the North, Rhode Island, Illinois. So I didn't experience that just blatant segregation, colored only, white only signs, that kind of thing that you were just alluding to. If you could help us out a little bit, how does that impact you? Like you're a kid growing up, you're a white girl in Georgia in the 60s, and you see these signs and you see blatant segregation. I think it was Lester Maddox was your lieutenant governor who ran a restaurant. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm making this up. You can look it up in a history book. He had a pickaxe. That's how he was going to keep Black people out of his restaurant, with a pickaxe. And so it's like, how does it work in your brain? Like, how is your brain absorbing that information, that raw?
With it, my family was never okay with it. My mother was a civil servant, and so she worked with diverse people, and so that was, those epithets were never allowed in our house. We had friends who worked at the base who were from different cultures. There were Afro Puerto Ricans, Afro you know, gosh, Caribbean folks who were stationed at the base. But it was really interesting because it was this dichotomy of, those children were allowed at my school, but African Americans weren't allowed at the school. It was really bizarre. And I've talked to other people who lived around bases and they experienced the same thing. We, certainly had conversations with family members who didn't agree with us. So for me, it was just something that I never fully understood. And it was, it was a little bit of a battle, people would use the N word and I would just say, don't use that in front of me. And, but it was just a different place. I didn't grow up in the deep, deep South, so I can't really speak further to that. But it's mind-boggling to me. I grew up here. But then, one of the things that I would say is that, we didn't have a corner on racism. And I think we're seeing that now with all of the issues in Minnesota, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, with police killing Black people, Colorado. So white supremacy may have had deep roots here, but we were not alone in that. And I think that that is something that we have to grapple with as a nation, is that it's really easy to point at the Southeast, as being the problem child. But when you do that, you have fingers pointing back at yourself, and you have to look at the racism and that is systemic to your own area. There's plenty of it. I went to a anti-racism conference when I was in college in Boston, and they were desegregating there, and it was truly frightening to me. I'd actually never seen that kind of violence, that widespread violence. They came after our bus, and it was really quite jarring to see that.
They came after your bus, did you say? Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah. We pulled up on a bus at BU, and there were some folks out there who were counter-protesting the conference, and they came after the bus.
When was this?
73, 74.
The glory years of Boston and integration, in quotes. Yeah. I'll stay away from the busing fight in Boston, and we'll keep it in Georgia. All right, Martha, so I'm speaking for many Illinoisans, whatever we're called, Chicagoans, when I say that Georgia really burst into our consciousness. First of all, in November, when you had that nip and tuck battle to see which way the state was going to go, and it went for Joe Biden. I remember the jubilation of people in Chicago, Democrats in Chicago, lefties in Chicago, when we were watching those numbers. And at first, Trump was ahead, but here comes Joe Biden. Old man Joe, he's catching up to him. And the Trump people are crying like little babies. Oh, the vote, it's late. You were such babies, Republicans. Anyway, and then of course the backlash after, and then January's the special Senate races, then the backlash to undo what happened. Let's just first, before we get to the backlash, talk about what were the positive steps that the leaders in Georgia made between 2018, when it was a very disappointing gubernatorial election, as you must know, Martha, because you lived through it, to 2020, when Biden beat Trump, and then in 2021, when the Dems won the 2 Senate seats. What were the positive changes that took place? Go ahead.
Well, I can speak to what we did to get there. We never stopped organizing, and I would say the other thing that happened is that for the first time in decades, Georgia was on the mind of many, many people, and people began to invest in Georgia again. We were really left on the vine to just dry out. for years and years and years. We had no investment whatsoever. People that I had organized, for example, when I was a young activist, moved. I mean, nobody could get work as a paid organizer here. So people left. And then our campaigns, our statewide campaigns, were just, very weak. They didn't go very deep, and they were very centrist and pandered, and really did not speak to the issues that were important to people. The other thing I'll say, and this is a family conversation, so the Democrats really ignored Georgia, the national organizing committees. And they disvalued their relationship with Black voters here. They did not keep their promises. They did not come down and court the Black vote, and they didn't deliver. So what happened between 2018 and 2020 is that Stacey Abrams showed that we could, in fact, really build up our base of voters and people to do the work. And finally, people began to invest in our institutions here and in people. So in 2020, I would say that just an amazing amount of money came into our state, and we were able to hire local organizers, young organizers. And that's an investment. That's an investment for the future. And it was really inspiring. It gave us a lot of hope. We knew that it was going to be tight, but we had our numbers and we could see where we could win. And so that is really what pushed us forward. And we had great candidates. I mean, we had really good candidates. So that speaks to the bench that we're building here, I would say. We didn't have a bench here. When we first started doing this work in 2017 as Indivisible, we had the highest number of uncontested seats in the country. And that was just, it was it was ridiculous. And we didn't have an organizing apparatus to help build that bench. And now we do. And we're training people to run for county commission and city councils and all those things, the school board. So we've really come a long way in those few years. But again, it comes back to the investment. You can't live on air. You've got to have a little bit of money. So people have been really generous with us, and we couldn't have done it without outside investment because we're really fighting dark money here. The dark money has, I always say Georgia voters have been worked on by experts. If you look at where this money is coming from on the dark side of things, ALEC invests heavily here. And our state politicians are members of the ALEC committees, that are pushing out these bills that so obviously, blatantly are coming out of their bill mills, So, and that's where these voter suppression bills came from, and the anti-trans student bills, and other just insane proposals. So we're, it feels like a 24/7 fight here, and we feel like we're really drinking from the fire hose. I say that all the time because the onslaught is pretty amazing, and we saw that in 2020 during the presidential election, and then into the runoff. The onslaught of hideous mailings that people received. I live in a very diverse neighborhood, and I received some mailings from the Republicans that were really, really going after the black vote. I mean, they were just disinformation, out and out lying, claims that they had done things that actually the Democrats had done. I mean, just really pushing the envelope there. So they were investing heavily in every media that they could get a hold of.
We explain that a little bit. You said there was hideous mailings that made claims that were unsubstantiated. What were some of the claims that they made in these mailings?
There was one that I received, had a photograph of a middle class, black family. Dad had on his Oxford shirt. They're in a nice, very expensive house, and they're talking about how Senator Perdue had done so much to protect health care in Georgia. Well, he didn't.
David Perdue.
He did nothing. I mean, we went to his office and asked about his plan. He kept saying, "Oh, we want the ADA to go away." I'm like, "Okay, what about it? What's your plan?" And they're like, "We'll get back to you on that," because the staff didn't have an answer. They never had an answer. Never had an answer.
Okay, that's. I thought you were going in a different direction. See, there's several tactics that the Republicans will employ. One is to scare white people with frightening images of black people. That's one tactic they employ, and then the other is to make grandiose claims, which are so fictitious. We all know, this is me speaking, not Martha, so I don't want to put words in her mouth. We all know the Republicans have done absolutely nothing on health care.
Nothing.
Come on, America, you know that. Except to try to kill the little diluted thing that Obama got passed, which I got to give him credit, Martha, how he got that through Congress. When I think about it, it was pretty amazing. But it's no Bernie plan, and all they did was try to kill it. No, that's hilarious. David Perdue, that's who Martha's alluding to.
Yep.
The former Republican senator from Georgia. Man, they must think the voters are pretty stupid. That's all I got to say, Martha. They have a low estimation of Georgia voters.
They do. But they were really desperate at that point. And I'll tell you, what I think happened is that they were, I think they didn't invest as heavily in the presidential as they might have, because they thought they had it sewed up, and that's why they're so mad. I mean, they're
Donald
just,
Trump.
My friend Wanda Mosley at Black Voters Matter always says, they big mad. They are big mad. They are not happy. They got taken, they got taken.
All right. So in the aftermath of the presidential election, President Donald John Trump called the officials, Republican election officials in the state of Georgia, had him on the phone and essentially said, "I'm doing this from memory. Just find me the 11,000 whatever it is votes that I need to win. Find them for me." These freaking Republicans. So to their credit, and the bar is low whenever I give credit to a Republican, Martha Shockey. I mean, the bar is low, but nonetheless, to their credit, they withstood that pressure from the president of the United States to freaking cheat, to literally put their hands into the ballot box, extract a bunch of Democratic votes, and throw them away. That's what Donald John Trump asked them to do. MAGA's like, "Oh, it makes sense to me." So, all right. So they found these Republicans who had enough guts to stand up to the president when he said blatantly cheat, and faced, by the way, like federal prison terms in doing it. So they couldn't steal the election that way. So they came up with a new strategy. We'll pass laws intended to undo the damage, in quotes, of losing at the ballot box. Instead of, I don't know, just like saying this, David Perdue, coming up with your own legitimate health care plan. Just saying, that may help you a little bit. Martha Shockey, talk about the law that went down, that was passed last month in Georgia, and the impact it may have on Georgia politics.
Well, the law is, it's very complicated, and we're still parsing out, small pieces of it. But it essentially takes away local control over over their board of elections. And so many counties are really not happy about this because, of course, they want to control their own election board, and it's an unfunded mandate because of the amount of cost that will be passed along to counties to implement the law locally. So that's one thing, and it's really dangerous. So let's say Trump calls and says, find me the 11,000 votes, and the state board of elections goes into a county and they think, we don't like the way this looks. We're going to take this over and count the ballots ourselves. Mm-hmm. Then they could overturn an election. And that is really what this is all about. There are all these other little things that they threw in there to try to, I think, assuage his irritation about mail-in ballots. I mean, Republicans use mail-in ballots as much more than Democrats do. Democrats like to go to the polling place and vote. And for African Americans, it's really important to be able to go to the polls and vote because for so many years they couldn't exercise that right. And so it's a celebratory thing for many communities. But the absentee ballots were used because of the pandemic. I mean, we really worked hard to keep people safe and to keep poll workers safe. So to me, that's the biggest issue with this entire thing. I mean, we had, in my county, for example, we were really very contested. The only fully Democratic county, I think, in the state. So of course they were after us, and it was just, my friends who were poll workers were there, and they were counting, and there were all these crazy people coming in, wanting to know what they were throwing away. You're throwing away votes. So the big that's the big thing. They're going to you can still request an absentee ballot, but you have a shorter period of time between being able to request it and receiving it. Mm-hmm. So it used to be 180 days prior to Election Day, and now it's 78 days. And you have to mail in your ballot between 25 and 29 days before the election. It used to be 45 to 49. Well, given the way the post office is set up now, that's a big deal. You may not get your absentee ballot in time. And if you're in South Georgia, your mail goes through Tallahassee in Florida because there are no major hubs down there. I mean, it's really, it's very rural, and they don't have those big hubs. Mm-hmm. So in 2018, we think one of the things that happened is that South Georgia was hit by a major hurricane. And so a lot of the absentee ballots were stuck in Tallahassee. And they came after the election was ended. So that was one thing. And that was not lost on them. That was not lost on them. It's a lesson that they learned.
They being the Republicans.
The Republicans, yeah.
See, I just want to say right now, I have never accused Republicans of being dumb. I'm just piggybacking on what Martha said. I never said you were dumb, Republicans. I said you were evil. I said you were conniving. I said you were diabolical. I said you were hypocrites. And I'm just going to address this one point. Because, Martha, the key to that vote, that law that the Republicans passed, in my humble opinion, doesn't have to do with the water bottles, though we've talked about them a lot on our show. Doesn't really even have to do with the voter IDs. It has to do with what you just illuminated, and thank you for doing that. And that is giving the Republicans at the state level control over local jurisdictions. So the next time Donald John Trump calls his boy down in Georgia, old boy will do as told and throw out Democratic votes. That's what it's all about. And I just want to say this, Martha, get your response. We just had Jaquie, Algee, and Pastor Fleshman on talking about the need for the John Lewis Act to be passed that would certify voting rights across the country again after they were gutted by the decision by the Supreme Court, heck of a job, Supreme Court in 2013 in the Holder Shelby County case. And Republicans, Ben, you can't do that. What about state rights, Ben? What about state rights? And I'm like, you guys are such freaking hypocrites. You talk about standing up to an overwhelming power when it suits your purposes, but when it doesn't suit your purposes, open window, throw out local rights, give our state control Republicans the authority over DeKalb County or Cobb County or what have you. Martha, I'm putting it out there. Get your reaction. I think they're tactical. There's nothing resembling a principle in the Republican Party, and it's all tactics designed to win the next election. And you are facing that right now in Georgia. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, the other thing that it does that they're not talking about, I mean, they don't ever look at long-term consequences, right? It's all about expediency. And so they're going for this right now because this is the problem that they have right now. And because Trump is pressuring them. You know, if you think he wasn't on every single one of their voicemails the next day, you know, telling that, you know, screaming and carrying on, then I don't believe it. I'm sure he was, no doubt in my mind, because they were acting crazy at the State House. They were absolutely acting crazy. They were just throwing bills out there without talking to anybody else, and they were all mad at each other. They were a big mess. And a lot of what they proposed didn't pass because people were just like, that. There's no way we can do that. And even they didn't want to do that, right? So, but what they're not thinking about in these long-term consequences is it also sets them up for just an incredible amount of corruption on their own side. So if somebody doesn't like Jimmy or Johnny's mom or daddy, and they run for office somewhere out in, you know, Lincoln County or someplace, then they can say, oh, you know, we don't think that election board did a very good job counting those votes, and we're going to come in and take it over. And so they're really setting it up for just this a huge morass of corruption. I mean, it's going to be nasty if they keep this up. And some of the John Lewis Act, from my understanding, will not all of it will solve all of our problems, but it will give us a foundation and it will give us some tools to fight the corruption that this bill inculcates. So,
Martha, I'm going to close with this to tell you about the impact Georgia's had on the minds, not just of lefties, but of MAGA people in Chicago. So the other day, I was in the company of a couple of MAGA people. Yes, I was in their company. And I was overhearing their conversation. And the subject, somehow or other, came up of Coca-Cola. And the one MAGA man, so I'm not making this up, Martha Shockey, this is a paraphrase of a conversation I heard between two MAGA-ites. And the one MAGA-ite said to the other one, I'm not drinking Coca-Cola. And the other one nodded. I'm like, God damn, this is profound. This struggle in Georgia, because like MAGA man got a hold of it. He must have gotten the message from Fox. I don't know, because Coca-Cola was one of the corporations that was forced, probably kicking and screaming the whole way, to take a quote unquote stand against this blatant attempt to keep black people from having a say in who gets elected in Georgia. I mean, like, talk about moving back the hands of time. So Coca-Cola took the stand. And now these two MAGA guys, what a sacrifice. They're like, I love Coke, but I'm not drinking it. I'm like, God damn. So Martha, it's not just lefties like me who look at you like, Martha's a hero and Stacey Abrams a hero, and Wanda Mosley's a hero. You know what I'm saying? MAGA, MAGA's paying it. I never said they were dumb. Never said that, okay? And they're paying it. That just got a little misguided, maybe. Can you believe that, Martha? The man's not drinking Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola took a quote-unquote stand on an attempt to undo everything John Lewis did when he took that stand on the bridge in Alabama back in 1965. It's amazing, Martha Shockey. Your thoughts?
Yep, we hear it all the time. We hear it all the time. The whole cancel culture thing. And then we have, of course, the queen of cancel culture opposition with Marjorie Taylor Greene up in Northwest Georgia. It's mind-boggling. And certainly I've known Republicans here for decades. It's been a fairly red state, but this is a new iteration that it's cult-like. It's very cult-like, and it's really difficult to have. You can't have even a basic conversation because I don't turn them into these political conversations, but boy, they do. So it's just mind-boggling. And you say Stacey Abrams' name, and they just go crazy. They just go crazy.
That's because she beat him.
That's right. And she's smart.
And she's smart. And let me just say this to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a big listener of my show, Martha Shockey. She's probably listening to you right now. If you're really against cancel culture, which you say you are, then I urge you to get on national television, take a can of Coke, pop it open, and say, MAGA, I'm drinking Coke because I'm against cancel culture. And if it's wrong for lefties to cancel my culture, it's wrong for you to cancel Coke. So here we go. Can you imagine? MAGA will be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. They'll be drinking bottles of Coke. But another front on which they are total hypocrites, Martha, they're the biggest cancel cultureites in the world. But somehow they cry the loudest. Do you understand what I'm saying, Martha?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, Martha, before I let you go, is there anything any well-intended Chicagoan can do to help out in Georgia? Anything you can recommend? Go ahead.
Yeah, so follow, I think everybody has access to Mobilize now. You can go on Mobilize and look up events and things that are happening in the state, and go and sign up for a phone bank. Go and sign up for a text bank. It will be a little while before very many of those are happening, but as we get into the next season, certainly we will have plenty of opportunities for people to engage, and we really would not have pulled off the runoff without people helping with that. We had so many people helping with that it gave us the opportunity to be on the ground and to knock on doors. And that was an incredible help, and we're just so grateful for that. Once the candidates get settled in here, please help us with donating to state candidates as well, not just our federal candidates, because clearly the state house matters and our state senate matters. And we're going into a redistricting year. So it's helpful for us to be able to say, we're raising a lot of money for these candidates because it causes them to not be as extreme as they might otherwise be. It causes them to not take a vote. And we had a few Republicans who didn't take votes on various measures this last session. And we haven't really seen that before, but they're aware that the wind is at their back. So they're beginning to make those choices.
So I guess that's progress. You say they didn't take a vote. In other words, instead of voting yes for some god-awful racist legislation, they just voted with present, or they went to the bathroom at that time and missed the vote, or, oh
Took
my
a liquid
God.
lunch, you know.
Funny, I got a phone call. Funny how that happened.
I gotta
Oh,
go
my
down to the
goodness.
bar.
Politicians are the same all over. That's the same stunt in Illinois. Oh,
Yeah.
but I got to meet with my constituent. I missed the big vote. Oh,
Dang.
anyway, Martha Shockey, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. I appreciate it. Keep up the
Been a
good work.
pleasure.
All right.
Thanks, Chicago, for all your help.
All right, Chicago has. There are a lot of good people, Lenny, out there, indivisible folks from Chicago who did join the effort. I like to tease a lot of my Chicago indivisible people because some of them are falling susceptible to that fair map thing, but most of them are really good people who have done outstanding work. So thank you very much, Martha Shockey. Also want to thank Pastor Fleshman and Jaquie Algee, who were on the show earlier in the day, and of course the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois, who rode at least 50 miles today, and he joined Rahm Emanuel at one wing. And Rahm was wearing spandex.
Busted. I shouldn't have shared that with you today. I knew you were going to say something on the show.
Hey, Rahm was wearing, hey, Dennis, Dr. D, let's go. Come on. Up and down the lakefront they went, and they did not see one person who wanted to know about Medicare. How about that? Sorry, D, I just had to say that. Anyway, I want to thank the man, the myth, the legend, the pride of Joe of Alton, Illinois, without whom the show would be possible. And as Pastor Fleshman, Jaquie Algee, and Martha Shockey can tell you, back home in Alton, they call him Dr. D. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows, Benny J bonus interviews, and so much more. ChicagoReader.com or wherever else you download podcasts. You can find us online at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can send us an email, bennyjshow@gmail.com, and you can call the Ben Joravsky Show. It's true, 708-658-4788. That number again, 708-658-4788. Haven't got a voicemail in a while? Call the Ben Joravsky Show right now. Leave us a voicemail. We'd love to talk to you. All right, and because Kathy wanted to hear it, the show's not over yet, everybody. We're going to play editorial board from the one, the only, Michael Girardi, because we're like a radio station, too. That's cool. All right, here we go. Kathy, there you go. Talk to you tomorrow. Oh, hold on. Oh, boy, I got to sync it up with my phone. Oh, brother. All right, everybody, we will see you tomorrow.
Just biked around Lake Michigan. Nearly 1,000 miles. I just biked around Lake Michigan. Nearly 1,000 miles.
When people want proof that the world ain't flat. right now,
We heard what you want to do. Now we'll tell you what's best for you. That's the story from the editorial board.
I just biked around Lake Michigan,
A little tip for the working man.
nearly 1,000 miles.
Your employers are all our friends. That's the story from the editorial board. That's the story from the editorial board. We'd like to save the world when it's under attack, but how you gonna pay for that?
How did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
good question, Mayor. Good question.
When people want proof that the world ain't flat, we'll just give them their money back. Oh yeah!
After years of neglect, Illinois is finally getting its mojo back.
That's the story from the editorial board. That's the story from the editorial board.
I just biked around Lake Michigan,
That's the story from the editorial board.
nearly 1,000 miles.
That's the story from the editorial board.
Face coverings.